Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this edition of Hypnosis Week. Yes, indeed, it's me again, Alex William Smith, better known to many of you as the British bad boy of hypnosis, Jonathan Royal of magicalguru.com. And yes, I've got another great guest for you. Somebody who I met in person, crikey, I'm losing track of time. It's 2017, I think it was, physically in person, if I remember correctly. An event that Steve Miller had organised in Birmingham called the Royal Event. But I already knew of him via Facebook. We were connected in that region, so I watched from afar. And he does a lot. He calls himself, doesn't call himself a hypnotherapist from a marketing point of view. He calls himself the Mind Fixer, or other places it comes up as the Mindset Engineer. But amongst the many techniques he uses are what you guys and girls would refer to as hypnotherapy, NLP, or other whatever fancy bloody titles they're giving them for psychological techniques. So I'd like to welcome to the show Steve, and let's see if I pronounce this somewhere close, Steve Blampied.
That'll do. Close enough, I'll answer to that. How are you doing, mate?
I'm fine. You'll see how it's spelled by looking underneath this video where the link is to his website, and then you can practice saying it better. Yeah, I'm good, Steve. So look, I always start with the same question for everybody, and then we just see where it goes. The obvious question is that, yes, as you sit here today and I interview you on the 29th of January 2020, and I point that out in case you're finding this in years to come and Steve mentions anything about pricing or anything like that that's time dependent. Yes, you do work with people to help them overcome the blocks and their issues and whatnot, but you didn't always do that. Tell us a little bit about your journey to getting to where you are now.
I was thinking about my journey, and obviously, you know, when you're invited on a podcast, you kind of go back and you think about where you've been. And my journey actually starts with somebody I know that you know, and that's Andrew Newton.
Okay.
Because he used to come to Jersey all the time.
Right. Yeah.
He used to do lots of shows here, and that sparked my interest in hypnosis. And I actually learned to hypnotize people from books from the school library.
The school library?
There was a book in the school library that spoke about it, and I picked up enough to be able to hypnotize people at parties. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Not a clue. But, you know, I can remember the first time anybody abreacted on me.
Okay.
But that isn't where I went, because I didn't kind of take that seriously. It was just something to do for fun. And I, through my kind of teenage years and afterwards, I suffered from really, really badly with what I now recognize as anxiety and depression. And somehow over kind of 20 years, I lived with that while building a career in IT, in the financial services industry, which is what Jersey is known for. You know, where I'm from, it's an international finance center. So my career really was in IT, right up until kind of 2005. But along with that, along in the background the whole time, was running this kind of thing that I would occasionally play with, and this interest in kind of reading books and studying and figuring out how the mind works. A lot of that was actually trying to figure out how my mind worked. You know, why I was stuck in this kind of
well, Sigmund Freud or Sigmund Freud did say that therapists generally are people that are merely searching for answers to their own problems.
Totally, absolutely. And in fact, it was kind of around 2005, 2006 when my career kind of just collapsed, and some really bad stuff happened, which I won't go into. It's not relevant. But my career fell apart from underneath me. I felt myself going back down again, where I thought I'd kind of managed it. I thought I was okay. And trying to kind of pick myself up from where I was the start of what I do now. Actually, at the time, I discovered tapping, you know, emotional freedom technique.
Okay.
And that made a massive difference to me. And I was able to pick myself up from what had happened and kind of get my life going again. But it just by chance, a training for emotional freedom technique happened locally, which I managed to get on, which led to me becoming a practitioner. And then it was like, oh, hang on a minute, this is what I should have been doing all along. And it all kind of fell into place.
I've got to, I mean, I don't even know why I was about to say, beware that the odd question might be me playing devil's advocate and asking the things that I suspect some people at home watching may suddenly pop into their heads. Because I think you probably know me better than a lot of people do, because you've actually seen me live rather than just believing shit on the internet. So with that in mind, you say that EFT, emotional freedom technique, it's one of many different tapping methods out there, but for people who don't know, thought field therapy came first, came before EFT from a guy called Roger Callahan. And then one of his students, Gary Craig, modelled it and improved it, the argument goes on, between the different camps, and came up with what he called emotional freedom technique. Personally, I just think that Gary Craig was sat in a hotel room in England somewhere and was watching, and if you don't know this, not in England, you're going to have to go on YouTube and have a look, but was watching the kids' TV show Rainbow with a character called Zippy in it, who sits and he talks and he goes, "Oh, Jeffrey!" And I think he was watching that and he suddenly saw Zippy go, "Oh, Jeffrey! I feel so much better now." I thought, he just tapped himself on the face. He feels better. And he came up with this important seeming ritualistic process to pattern interrupt, distract the mind, is what I would argue. Why do you honestly think it helped you? That is the crux of that question.
If you'd have asked me that question when I was doing it, when I bought into the whole EFT thing, I'd have gone completely down the line. I'd said, yeah, it's meridians, it's all this kind of stuff that we were taught. I would have completely bought into it.
Yeah.
If you asked me that question now,
I did.
The answer is that it's like most forms of therapy that, and I know we kind of agree on this, that people have the innate ability to get over anything they want. We all have that. We have that ability to get over, and sometimes what we need is, like, as you put it, the important seeming ritual to give us access to that ability that we already had. Now I see it that, and I will happily say to people that I use something similar to EFT occasionally, which is something that I picked up from you, which is the CMT process.
Okay.
And I use that, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you tap. It doesn't matter what you do. I say often, I could hit people with a furry stick and they'd get better if the belief was there.
And that's the key, viewers. Honestly, it sounds like sometimes my questions are poo-pooing what we do, but you've got to remember the people I'm interviewing have been doing this for decades, and so have I. And the key thing, if it rattles your cage in some way, is you've got to ask yourself, why is it rattling your cage? Is there some underlying truth, and would you benefit from realising that? And also remember, it doesn't really matter how it gets done, as long as you don't hurt anyone, physically, mentally, or emotionally. If they get a good end result that they desired, does it really matter? Although I would argue, once you realise perhaps that it's down to intent, placebo, and all these myriad of other things, that you can then add on other layers of important seeming rituals to make it arguably more effective for the client. Now, that's all well and good therapy-wise, but I know that largely you do a lot of, I suppose, people would view it as being success coaching.
Yes.
And stuff. How does that differ?
It's the same thing. There's no difference. We're still dealing with human beings that have got unconscious patterns that they're running, things that they're not aware of. It's the same stuff. Whether I get somebody that's coming to me because they feel that they're suffering from anxiety, or whether they're stuck in their business and they're not able to move forward, or they're not achieving the things that they want to, the things that they're consciously saying they want to achieve, but it's not happening. It's all the same thing. Underlying it, for some reason, they're running some kind of, for want of a better word, some kind of program that is causing them to get these external results. And it's the same process. You go in, you find the program, you alter the program, you change the person, fundamentally change how they approach the world, and they get the result they want. Whether that result is that they're able to go out into the world without having those feelings, or if they're able to go out into the world understanding those feelings so that they don't bother them in the same way, or whether they're able to go out and create the £1 million business that they've never done before. It's the same thing. It's identical.
Okay, so if it's the same thing, identical, which obviously it is because it's what you do, so it's your experience. But I mean, people watching might have fallen into the trap, some of them, because there's so many different bloody courses out there. They might have fallen into the trap of saying there's a there's a coaching course here, and then there's a coaching course for business, and then there's coaching for business including NLP skills, and there's coaching for business. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. If it's ultimately the same technique for stopping somebody smoking as helping them remove a block that's getting in the path to making money, why the frigging out? I mean, what's your views? Like, there's all these misleading, shit out there. There's something different when it's in this area.
Do you know what shit is? Do you know what shit is?
Go on.
It's subconscious human interaction training.
Excellent. I like that one.
Subconscious human interaction or interactivity training.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, and we all pick up loads of shit when we're growing up.
So would you say the bulk of what you do on the kind of the corporate success coaching side is, I'm just going to get rid of, helping people get rid of shit that's in their head, or is it viewing things differently? Because I mean, there's a slight difference between those two.
Okay. There are some distinct things that I would break down what I do into.
Okay.
First of all, is getting people to go past the limitations of what they think they're capable of. Because we pick up loads of programming as children of what we can have or what we're actually capable of. So a lot of people don't think big enough. They just don't even let themselves think big enough for fear of being disappointed, I suppose. In some ways, that's what it is. So part of it is just actually making a big enough plan, making a big enough goal. If you say to some of the people that some of the clients I work with, I want you to create me a program that's £50,000. Create a program for your clients that's £50,000 for them to do, and people freeze. Right? I'm not asking them to sell it. I'm asking them to create it, and they can't even think big enough to create it. So part of it is about thinking big and having those big goals. But the other part is going and looking for the reasons why you haven't got it yet. What are the reasons that you are holding yourself back from having it? And that's always, without fail, that goes back to your earliest experiences. Childhood experiences are always, the root of our issues always go back to something that happened kind of in the imprint period, prior to kind of 7, 8 years old. There's stuff that our identity gets built around.
So a lot of people like that kind of falls into your kind of Sigmund Freud areas.
Yeah, it does, except that I'm not saying that if we think about Freud had lots of ideas about how people, like the complexes people built up and the.
Yeah, I mean, I think an overview of it would be the kill your father, fuck your mother syndrome.
There we go. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I was leaving that open for you, but that isn't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the structure of our identity, of how we do the world. If you grew up in a family where money was bad. You know, things in our language like filthy rich, right? There's stuff hidden in plain sight about this. If your parents were of the attitude that rich people were bad in some way, you know, that rich cat there that screws people over, that kind of stuff, you can build your identity and how you do the world around those beliefs. They can underpin who you are. So you can go through life thinking, even if it's if you're trying to push through it, if there's an unconscious rule, for instance, that you've got that says that rich people are bad, well, that's where the resistance is going to show up to you being rich. And you see this all the time. You see people that become rich and then they lose it all.
Yeah.
And they seem to do everything. They seem to actually actively go out to try to get back to that point of where they were before, of where their mind is capable of, or where their mind is comfortable of being.
It's like the majority of lottery winners, isn't it? They've lost all the money, the multi-millionaire lottery winners within sort of couple of 3 years at most. They've lost it all.
It's really common. And the converse to that is that you can take somebody who's come from a background where they kind of learned that money was easy to get, and you can take their money away and they will get it back straight away.
Because it seems the most natural thing in the world to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can complicate this as much as we want with kind of fancy language and analyzing and all that kind of stuff, but it's actually pretty simple. It's your underlying set of rules about how the world works. Control what you get.
So how do you change those rules for the client? I mean, because consciously, if this is at an unconscious level, you know, just consciously saying change your thoughts, it doesn't really work, does it? Because this is more powerful. So, I mean, do you hypnotize them, or do you frame it as something different, eyes closed relaxation process? I mean, how do you do it?
Some of the things I do you might not recognize as hypnosis.
Okay.
That
sounds interesting.
People have often got a preconception about what hypnosis is. But it really does depend on the person. Sometimes it's as simple as asking them to look at asking them to think about where their rules come from. All right. So something I'll say a lot of the time is I'll be working with a client and they'll make a statement such as money doesn't grow on trees. All right. There's a classic. Money doesn't grow on trees. Okay. Who told you that? Who told you money doesn't grow on trees? And they'll be like, well, I can remember my mum saying that. And at that point you can say, how good was your mum as a business person? Right. And you make them laugh. And that moment of laughter is sometimes all you need as an in to just get past that kind of what we call the critical faculty, the bouncer at the door of the nightclub. Sometimes just laughing is enough to get in there. And you say, yeah, is that right? Yeah. How good were they as a business person? They go, oh my God, they were terrible. Yeah. So is what they said right? And you see that moment of realization happen where they kind of, they look around and they go, oh, wow, I've been living that. And that can be enough. Now, that doesn't necessarily appear to be hypnosis, but it is. It's still having this. You're still doing the same thing. And sometimes there's a formal trance induction. You know, we'll do the whole kind of what they expect to have.
Is that more a case of if that's what they ask for?
You get a feeling. You get a feeling with people whether they're kind of buying into it, and sometimes. Just sometimes doing something like a hand stick or a finger lock, you know, where you get their fingers to come together. That can be enough to destabilize disbelief, you know, to kind of break that disbelief. I know that Carl Smith, somebody I respect a lot, Carl uses that all the time. He's basically built his entire business on getting people to have their fingers come together.
Yeah.
You know, he talks about that a lot. But it's true. If you can get past somebody's disbelief that they can have what they want, but sometimes you just need to prove it to them. I did this with, we did a live event at the end of last year, and we had about 30 people in the room, and I had them doing a finger stick and a hand lock and all this kind of stuff, and a few people in that room had transformational experiences and their business changed just from being in that room.
Mm-hmm.
Because it gave them it kind of freed them up. It gave them, I know you talk about this a lot. They gave them the permission to kind of go, oh, well, it's all right. I've seen this guy now, so I can go and do it, which is a big part of it as well. I know you talk about that with smoking.
Yeah. Well, with pretty much anything, it's my view that largely it's giving them the excuse, permission, environment, time, removal of excuses as to why they didn't do it before. Yeah. With the business coaching, success coaching end of it, I mean, people viewing, you see it bandied around. Oh, if you do this business coaching course, then you can earn a whole stack of money. Now, that depends how good the course is at teaching you to get clients, I suppose, to one degree. But there is this element that business success coaching that people charge more for it.
Mm-hmm.
And logically, I would argue that part of it working is the people attaching enough value to make that kind of investment in the first place. What's your kind of views on that?
Absolutely. That's completely right. There's a story I tell a lot, which goes back quite a few years, and I used to charge about £90 an hour. Mm-hmm. Okay, which was a kind of a medium high kind of rate for what I did and where I was. It was okay.
That's still a lot higher than sadly a lot of hypnotherapists in England have got the balls to charge.
Unfortunately, it is. Well, first of all, is you should never charge by the hour anyway, but that's a different story. So we were talking because we've got a health and fitness kind of business here locally. And we were talking to the owner of a swanky kind of club in town, who wanted to bring us on to do kind of wellness stuff for his people. Okay. So we were sitting there, and I was talking to him about what I could do and the kind of things that I was able to help with. And he said, "So what are your rates?" And I said, "Well, it's £90 an hour for that." And he kind of sat back and looked at me, and he went, "No." He said, I can't do that. And I was a little bit naive, to be honest, because I was like, oh, no, I charge too much.
Yeah.
And he said, I can't present you to my people at £90 an hour. He said, they're just not going to take you seriously. That moment for me was one of those moments that snuck past my critical faculty. It snuck past my bouncer in the gate, and it hit me deep inside. And it was like, oh, I've got this wrong. I really have got this wrong. People expect to pay what they feel is the right amount. Setting a rate, that rate depends on who you're working with for a start. The multi-millionaire that spends £90 on a bottle of champagne and leaves half of it on the table is not going to take you seriously if you charge £90 to remove his lifelong phobia of flying.
Yeah.
And this guy said to me, he actually said to me, if you'd have told me it was £5,000 to work with you, he said, I'd have taken you seriously. Very quickly on my feet, I said, it's all right, I can work at that level as well.
Excellent. But yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, there's a tale I relate. One time I was contacted by a very rich individual from Greece, is as much as I can really say. And they asked how much it was going to be for me to treat their supermodel girlfriend. And I said, 2.5. That's literally what I booked. You logically assumed that they'd looked at my website at the time. And on the website, it says it did then, it said from 250 quid. So I was just like being casual, 2.5. Yeah, right. It was agreed. So I assumed he's looked at the website and we're singing off the same hymn sheet. I do the session. At the end, he goes, "Oh, it's a check, all right." And it was like Coots Bank, so I looked to it. Yeah, check's fine. I knew for I wouldn't. I don't normally take checks, and I don't normally ever see people without being paid up front. But given the individual, I knew I was getting paid. So he just writes it, folds it in half, puts it on the table. I don't even pick it up because I don't want to look. I don't need the money. It's fine. Have a brew. Go. He takes me then and his model lady friend to a local Chinese restaurant for a meal before he heads back to London. I eventually get home and open the check and I look at it and think, oh, fuck, he's fucked this up. And I look at it closer and I realise that what he's written does match the figures he's put in numbers, and he wrote it out for 2.5 grand. But it was 2.5. It never crossed his mind. He hadn't looked at the website, and without me having said an actual figure, he assumed 2.5 meant that, and was more than happy. He was like, at the time he was writing it, he said, "Are you sure you don't want more?" Because it goes back to what you were saying about buying. You're not selling your time in hourly increments. You're selling results. Yeah, you can
totally
open that up a bit more.
Yeah, you're not selling. You're not selling how much your time is supposedly worth, right? Because that isn't what the person is coming to you for. They're not coming to you to dig a hole in their garden, right? You can't say, like, it's £10 an hour and I'll dig a hole in your garden, and they end up with a hole, right? They're coming to you because they have something that is massively important to them. It quite possibly has taken them a long time to get to the point that they've actually come to see you, because they've probably been living with whatever this is for quite some time. They've had to get to that point of threshold where they've actually gone, I've got to do something about this. So this problem is huge to them. Well, it's a good chance it's a huge problem to them. So you're not paying them for the hour, or sometimes the 5 minutes that they sit with you. Because we do that occasionally. We get the odd 5-minute wonder that click and it's gone. Sometimes people get better walking in the door. What they're paying for is what it's worth to them. It's the impact that it has in their life. That's what the value is here. It's not how much your time is worth, and or how many courses have I taken and how good am I at doing this. It doesn't matter. It's the difference you're making to the person. That's where the value is.
I think that's something a lot of therapists have a mental block with. The idea that you can, assuming you market yourself right, because it's no good marketing, charging £1,000 a session, say, or £1,000 for a result, if you're only marketing to people who are likely to be all unemployed on benefits, who can't afford. Although that said, if they value the result enough, they can save up and afford to buy the latest bloody Xbox and 800 quid iPhone. So if they genuinely want the result, even people from impoverished backgrounds will save up. And I think a lot of therapists have a guilt complex about, I can't possibly charge somebody like that, say 500 quid to stop them smoking, and totally forget about the fact, well, hang on a minute, there's probably spending at least a tenner a day smoking. So,
But there's another thing as well, and this comes from a book. This was actually in a book I read recently, 80/20 Marketing by Perry Marshall. And in the back of the book, he says, it is your responsibility to find the people who can pay the maximum amount for your services and to market solely to those people. Because only by doing that can you be in a position to help the people who need it that can't pay you anything. By marketing to the people at the top and making as much money as you possibly can, you get to build wells in Africa.
Yeah.
When you take it to the extremes, instead of marketing to the middle of the road, the people that kind of, that seems a lot, take it to the extremes. Help the people who really can pay you the £100,000, and then use that money to help the people that have got nothing.
Mm. That's profound for
It is.
people.
It was powerful. I remember reading. I was coming back from Spain on a plane with my wife, and I kind of it's one of those moments where I stopped and I just said, "You've got to read this because this is how I feel."
You know, it's similar, but it's a level above something. I tell people when I'm doing my courses, and what I say is, everyone therapists to go on different training schools, go on about this, that, the other, and they're going about ethics. We're more ethical. This is more that. Well, hang on a minute. My definition of being ethical is this: to give your client what they want in the fastest possible, consistently going to be long lasting for them, safe
Yep.
way that, or that ecologically, I hate that word, but ecologically is right in terms of their environment and the family structure and all manner of other considerations, whereby you yourself as the therapist are giving them 100% of you when they're paying money. And to give 100% of you, you need to, the chances are you need to start charging more and marketing differently. Because if you're sat there, as I see so many therapists do on groups discussing, oh, if I go on this course, will I be able to earn more money? Or how can I get more clients? Well, hang on. If you're sat there thinking, how am I paying the mortgage this month? And that program's running in the back of your mind, even though you may not consciously be thinking about it, you are on some level arguably being distracted from giving your client 100%, which I would say is unethical.
Yeah, I would agree completely.
And therefore you need to charge more so you can be in a position where you're not worried about your bills, so you can give your clients 100%.
Yeah.
Is what I would argue.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think that's something that I call them the boys' clubs.
Yeah.
You know,
the other thing as well
yes.
is that you or I could teach somebody to be a fairly effective therapist in hours.
Oh yeah.
A few hours, and we could equip somebody with enough tools to be above average as a therapist.
Mm.
You don't need all of that stuff. Right? You don't need the endless courses, the endless qualifications that legally in most parts of the world are meaningless.
Yeah.
You know, they don't mean anything at all. They all they mean is that a group of people have got together and said, yeah, let's issue this certificate.
I think the value in some of them,
Placebo
is obviously a value of having a certificate on the wall. But I mean, with certain courses, I think there's a value, but I don't think most people actually realise this is the value they're buying. If someone's come up with a nice name
mm-hmm.
and a nice logo and a credible looking website, and they managed to get some media publicity for it, I am actually going to give one example because I'm sure he won't mind. Steve Miller, the British weight loss specialist hypnotherapist, who runs what he came up with a weight loss system called Hypnosis.
Yeah.
And it's very much marketed on the angle of you're too gorgeous to be fat. You know, if you remain as fat as you are, you're going to die early and all. It's quite shocking, controversial, yes. And he gets himself regularly. There's not a week goes by where he isn't on a national radio show, TV show, or featured in the mainstream print media here in England. So then he set up a thing called the Association of Weight Loss Hypnotherapists. And yeah, it is another boys' club at first sight. You pay a yearly fee to be a member of something, to be able to put some meaningless, not legally required letters after your name that maybe have a bit of a placebo effect on the client. Except, unlike 99.9% of these boys' clubs where you pay a yearly fee and allegedly you can get cheaper insurance, which is a laugh because I get my students' insurance just as cheap, sometimes cheaper, where you have to pay a yearly fee. They say it's non-profit, but bizarrely, they don't really do anything for the members. With Steve's Association of Weight Loss Hypnotherapists, when you're a member, you can legally therefore say that you're a member of this weight loss association run by Steve Miller, who Hypnosis, and every week is in the media, so you can then republish for example, put out articles that Steve Miller's just got in the national papers and go, I'm in the society association run, I'm approved, effectively endorsed by this individual. And because of the weight of publicity he's getting, that is worth it in marketing terms to pay the yearly fee to be a member.
So,
but with most of these boys clubs, it isn't.
I think what I'm saying, I'm not putting down getting trained and getting some kind of certifications. I'm not putting that down at all. I've done dozens and dozens and dozens of those, including yours. What I'm saying is, don't believe that another qualification is what you need in order to be effective and to charge more.
Right? Quite often it's confidence you need yourself as a therapist, isn't it?
More than anything.
Or better marketing skills rather than
business skills.
Yeah.
Business skills and the confidence to do it. And confidence comes from helping people. I wasn't confident the first time I went out and helped somebody. I wasn't confident at all, but I gained confidence. The more people I helped and the more things I did, the more confident I got.
So what would you say is perhaps the easiest? Yeah, we'll go with easiest first. I know that's all a matter of perception, really, but what, generally speaking, would you say is the easiest sort of things that viewers watching this, hypnotherapists who are stuck in a rut, stuck believing maybe, the most they can charge is what they're currently charging? How would you give them the kick up the arse? What sort of easy things could they start doing themselves to get to that belief system that, you know what, yeah, it is okay to charge more, and in fact, it'd be the right thing to do?
What easy things? It's quite a personal thing sometimes. Sometimes you have to find people's own triggers, for that. The first thing is to really understand that mindset, that frame of mind, that it's about the value you give, not about the time you spend. That's the first thing you've got to understand. And sometimes you've just got to really think about that. Think about I'm going to illustrate this with another of my stories.
Please do.
And I want people listening to this to think about the value here before I talk about how much they paid, right? One of my first paying clients was it was a young couple, and the woman contacted me and said, I don't know if you can help me. Would you be prepared to see my fiance? And I said, okay, what's going on? And she said, well, we really want to get married, but I really want to go away and get married away, and he can't get on a plane.
Okay.
Right. Would you see him? And these days I'd say, well, he needs to call me. But back then I was like, okay. So I went to see them, and it took me about half an hour, and we cleared his flying phobia. Okay. A year later, I got an email from that lady saying that they'd just come back from honeymoon. Okay. And they'd been, I forget where it was, but I think it was the Seychelles. It was a beach that they'd been to, and she just said, thank you so much. I just want you to know that you changed our lives. How much is that worth?
Everyone's going to have their own opinion on that, aren't they? But I mean, the first thing that springs to my mind is that and I'll probably get people sending me emails saying I'm sexist here, but from the female perspective, which stereotypically is the driver in wedding organisational things, they'll think nothing of spending thousands and thousands of pounds on a dress, or thousands and thousands of pounds on table decorations for the reception. So if it is arguably something that is more important, life-changing, transformational and long-lasting, because obviously it means for life, the person could then get on a plane, whereas after the wedding, the table decorations are taken back from where they've been hired from, then I would say that it is not unjustified to attach the same kind of value to it as the table decorations, the wedding dress, in which case thousands.
I know somebody that spent £30,000 on a wedding once. 30 grand on a wedding.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. So was it fair and just and equitable that they paid me less than £100 for that?
Christ. Christ. I mean, in my world, I would say, thank God it worked, but there was a massive negative suggestion thereby only charging 90 quid that could have screwed it up. Because, I mean, Christ, that's naff all. I mean, yeah. They'll spend more than that on confetti to give out.
Yeah. And yet, every day there are people out there that charge £40 or £90 or £150 for stuff that has even more impact than that on a person's life. That's a question that if you're out there charging low fees, that is a question I want you to ask. I want you to think about that. How much was that fair and equitable that I was paid £90 for something that was so valuable?
Well, we've got to say yes on the one hand, because obviously that's what you chose to charge. But I would, for all the reasons I've already said, I would argue that that's a ridiculously, on any level, that's a ridiculously low amount.
Yeah. So like I say, that's the question I've got for anybody that's listening to this that is stuck in the low fees place. Just think about that and see what comes up. See how you feel about that, whether you feel that's fair, and then look at yourself and find out. Look at yourself and ask yourself: are you doing the same? Are you allowing that unfair thing to happen?
That's an interesting twist on it, yeah.
And I don't mean that if somebody comes to you and says, "I've got no money, but this thing is ruining my life," if you want to help them, help them. I do. Sometimes people will call me and they'll say, "I desperately need your help, and I don't know how I can pay for it." And I'll find a way that it works. I had one a couple of months back. A woman called me locally, and I very rarely see clients locally anymore. I see all my clients online now. And a lady called me and said, "My daughter is threatening to kill herself, and I don't know who else to turn to. We've been through the system, we've been everywhere, but don't know who to turn to. And somebody said that you might help."
Right.
And I could hear. It was horrendous. I could hear the daughter in the background. And I said, "Where are you?" And she was 5 minutes away down the road. And I said, "Look, I'm coming now." And I got in the car. I drove. I brought the daughter down from that place where she was in. I got her calm, got her back on a in control, so that they could get through the night, because that was what I was concerned about, was getting through that thing. And when she came to say, "How much do I owe you?" I said, "You know what? I'm just pleased that I've been able to help." And I didn't charge them. I couldn't do that if I didn't charge everybody else enough.
Yeah, which is a very, very profound thing to think about. People, really, there'll still be people who mentally wrestle with it and go, "Well, yeah, is that?" And come up with all manner of excuses.
I'm going to give you another one. Right? If somebody with an entrepreneur or a coach comes to me and says, "I want to take my business to the next level. I'm kind of doing like 50,000 a year, but I want to go to the next level. I want to really do something huge, and I'm not getting there. Right? Would you help me?" if I issue them an invoice for £5,000, right, which is consultancy, so it's tax deductible because I'm a consultant, right, and my business issues them an invoice, and they come to see me for a couple of sessions, and they take their 50,000 a year business to 2.5 million. That's the best £5,000 they've ever spent.
Yeah.
I can throw these at you all day because this is what I live.
Well, one example, and I personally have only ever done this once. I'm making that clear, so I'm not claiming that I do this all the time, because I don't, just because it doesn't particularly interest me that much. But I did some training with somebody once, and they explained a system for guaranteeing that you go into a company, not charge them anything up front, and increase their profitability guaranteed by a certain level, which you would tangibly tell them once you've done your examination, as it were. You'd say to them, I can guarantee you this kind of increase, and on that basis, based on that kind of level of increase, assuming you have it over this time period, you therefore will pay me one-off, once only, say 50% of that figure that I've increased your profits by. Mm-hmm. But then every year thereafter, you should still be making at least that extra profit, and you're not having to pay me. It's a one-off. And so he was talking telephone number figures. And I tried it once, and this is, I'm relating this for people at home. How, if you actually do want to earn money, earning money is not difficult if you approach it in the right manner. That's the thing. His scam, I use the term scam, but he wasn't. He provided them with what he promised was that he would go into a business, and he said he'd get permission to be able to talk to all. Yes, he talked to the directors and all that, but more to the point, he got them to confirm in writing they'd leave him alone while he went and spoke to all the people lower down in the business. Because he said, without a doubt, the people lower down know more about what's going on in that business, generally speaking, than the directors and the people at the top. And he'd go and ask them simple things like, if this was a company, it was all context relevant, but if this is a company that's sending out hundreds of thousands of letters every month, he'd go and ask where they were getting the paper from, where they were getting the envelopes from, where they were getting the ink for the photocopiers from. And with a simple cursory Google search, he could incredibly easily find a place they could order all the paper from and save, like, quite often £1 or more per pack. And then save tenner a time on printer and all the different components, the consumables they use within the business. And with a big business, a big organisation, this equated to the fact that he could be saving them on a monthly basis 50 grand, say, which over a year is £600,000 sterling. Let's just call it $1 million for people in America to make it easy figures as we're going on. So he goes to them and said, I can guarantee to say, make your business. That's how he framed it, not save your money, and make your business bottom line profit increase by at least $1 million over the next 12 months, in which case, only when that result occurs, you pay me half of it, £500,000. And as long as you implement that thereafter, you'll still carry on being more profitable. And he's talking in terms of selling them the profit, the result. They then had to agree in writing to implement what he told them to do, because if they didn't, there was a penalty fee of, say, 50 grand. So at which point, well, we're either going to pay him 50 quid for suddenly just telling us where to get new paper and ink and stuff from. It sounds ridiculous, I know. Or we implement it, and actually, you know what, the figures show that we will save that. And yes, we'll have to give him £500,000, but we'll have an extra £1 million on our bottom line profits. And as much as you might think people angrily go, we're being scammed it, it's often the most obvious, ridiculous things like that that can make the difference within a bit. And he's built a career on just doing that in businesses. Yeah. And it sounds ridiculous even just relating it, but I mean, and people watching will go, oh, couldn't do that. That's ripping people off. But it isn't, is it? It's not. No. You're genuinely saving the money.
Yeah. Absolutely. Or saving the money or showing them how to make a lot more.
Yeah. you know, sometimes it just use your eyes and ears. Ask the little people. This can be the key to getting in to, you know, along the way, you might, as a hypnotherapist, offer a group, you know, stress management element to it. I should have put my phone on silent. I apologise, viewers. I mean, do you do stuff in groups at all with companies, corporate? Is it all one-to-one?
Because I work with I made a decision, and that was to work with people who wanted to change the world.
Okay.
Right, and that was purely because I thought about how can I make a big impact in the world, sitting on an island in the middle of the sea.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how can I make a big impact in the world without having to go crazy and do too much, you know, and kind of like put myself out there and burn myself out. What was the best way that I could do that? What was the most efficient way? And I thought, well, what I need to do is I need to help the people that help others. So I work with coaches and hypnotherapists and entrepreneurs who are on a mission to do something important. So I tend to work with individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But where I do work with groups is I work with like Facebook groups. So I like to go into kind of Facebook groups of entrepreneurs and be the mindset guy in that group, which is what I'm doing at the moment. I'm very active in a couple of groups, and I'm working in a group setting, but it's lots of individual entrepreneurs.
So I mean, how do you? What's the word I'm looking for? Quantifiable. Do you offer any form of quantifiable guarantee? I'm using the word quantifiable because obviously the only way you can really guarantee things in our arena is if the individual has also agreed to do certain things and put those in place.
The only guarantee that I give is that if you don't do anything about it, nothing's going to change.
Okay, which is, yeah, very true.
You know, at the same time, I absolutely rely on my ethics, which is that if somebody really got nothing out of working with me, I wouldn't charge them. But that's next to impossible. It's next to impossible for anybody to go into any kind of relationship, any kind of business relationship, and to get nothing out of it.
As long as they actually take action on things that, yeah.
And you know, and a lot of that comes down to choosing the people that you work with. You know, that's really important. Don't just take anybody. Don't just take any client. Make sure that the client, when you're working at a high level and you're charging higher fees and you're being more, I like to think of it as more professional about what you're doing. You select your clients carefully, because you want to make sure that the people that you're working with really want it. And if they really want it, and you are confident that you can provide the solution, you know, I could offer a complete 100% money back guarantee, and nobody would ever take me up on it.
So interestingly, that puts into my head the people out there, and there's certain, they can remain nameless, but I'm sure some viewers will have encountered these where they say, bloody hell, they're up front saying, you know, this program's going to cost X thousands of pounds, but then they're blatantly saying, however, before you can sign up for it, you have to go through this interview process, and then we'll decide whether you're worthy of joining the program. Which, you know, you see discussed, well, hang on, why are they doing that? Because ultimately, aren't they just going to let everybody in because they're taking money off them? And some of them obviously are doing, because it's a classic sales psychological ploy. But I mean, what's your thoughts on that kind of make it more difficult for the client to get to you, and they're more likely that they're going to believe it and value it more?
I make it a little bit more difficult to get to me, to filter out the people who really want it. So to get to see me, you have to fill out a form first, to get as far as the free call that I offer, because I offer a free consultation where we can chat through what you hope, and to figure out if I can help you with it. But to do that, there's a form you've got to fill out first, because just that one step of having to fill that form out stops people who aren't really committed.
Yeah.
Or it sends them to somebody else that isn't asking for that, and they get the help elsewhere. But that's okay, because it means I get less calls coming through. I get fewer people contacting me, but the ones that do have gone to the trouble of filling out that form.
I think that's a massive point for people watching, especially the therapists who are currently caught in, I need more clients. Maybe you don't need more clients, you just need better clients.
And better is subjective, right? It's not a judgment call, it's subjective, because a better client for me might be a terrible client for somebody else, and vice versa. It's like, rather than better clients, it's clients that are better for you, clients that fit you better.
I don't know why this just entered my head, but I'm going to throw it out as a imaginary scenario to get your viewpoint on. Whilst I say it's an imaginary scenario, I am certain that this probably is relevant to some people watching this at some point. But the imaginary scenario is that we've got someone who spent thousands upon thousands of pounds, let's say, on a hypnotherapy course. Don't matter who with. An hypnotherapy course, well, it does matter who with. A hypnotherapy course where they've been taught next to piss all about marketing and advertising, publicity or promotion, the business side. They've been taught very little about that. But they have got a tool bag of skills there. And they're currently stuck in what they perceive to be a dead-end, normal job, working 9 to 5. They don't get on with people in the office. And the idea is that this is going to be their escape route. But they're scared about, leaving that, and am I going to get enough clients to pay the bills and all that. And they may have listened to the rest of this interview about charging guy and all that. But at this moment in time, they've worked out, well, hang on, everyone else locally, hypnotherapists in their local area might, let's say that the average rate's 100 quid, for the sake of speaking. Sadly, in a lot of areas, the average rate's about 75 quid. And then look at it and think, well, what about the people who can't afford the 75 quid? What if I was to charge 50 quid less and literally aim and, put leaflets out to the areas where stereotypically the poorer people are living, not in the big, expensive detached houses. And as a result, they get a large number of low-paying clients, but ultimately, if they book them all in, say, over a period of 2 or 3 days, they suddenly have the capability to be earning easily double, triple what they were in the dead-end job that was making them feel depressed. So they can give the clients 100% because they're not worried about how they're going to pay the bills. What are your thoughts on that, given that it kind of goes against some of the advice given previously because it's undercutting the market, but in the context of the imaginary scenario I've just given, it would result in the individual getting out of what they perceive to be a dead-end job, getting out of an environment where they feel stressed, depressed, having to socialise with these people in the workplace, perhaps wondering how they're going to pay the bills because they're just earning enough, but suddenly the scenario of undercutting the market and getting into the hypnotherapy would give them more than they were. And thus they feel better as a person, so there's loads of benefits to them, health-wise, mentally, spiritually, and therefore they can give more to the clients, perhaps, than how does that work because to me, I would argue that for that person at that time, that seems like the no-brainer thing to do. But what would your thoughts be? Because that goes kind of against a lot of what we spoke about.
Okay. There are two things that are coming to mind. First of all, absolutely, you can see how that would be appealing. But if you go down that route of just getting as many people you can at a low rate, you're going to get a lot of people who aren't really committed. So your success rate is going to go down, or your success rate is going to start low.
Yeah.
Okay. So because you're not charging enough to get the people who really want it, who are having to save up to come and see you, your success rates are going to be lower than average, which is going to potentially make you feel that you're not as good as you should be, which is going to drive you to then go and look for another course that you can't afford because you're in this situation of only just being able to afford what you've done anyway. And it's going to spiral downwards, right? And you'll end up going back to your job. So that's the thing that immediately jumps out at me, that undercutting people, it's the race to the bottom. And people perceive low cost things as being low quality. The whole thing it's a race to the bottom. That being said, I could see that it would work if you could engineer that in a manner like a group session, where you could run low cost things to groups of people, so that the amount you earn for the actual time you spend is higher. That would work. Absolutely. And perhaps for a short term boost. Yeah, maybe. But as a long term strategy, it's terrible. It's terrible.
No, I couldn't agree more. I was throwing it out there on purpose because I hope you'd answer like that, which you have. Because I think, sadly, I said it was an imaginary scenario, but it's something that I see happening all too often. And there's so many, apparently, full-time professional therapists, and they make out that they are, because they paid for the website. I mean, so many of them, just the websites aren't getting found because they don't know about that side of things. They're still there because they paid for X number of years up front, and they're actually not getting any clients, and they've gone back to doing it part-time and having a proper job. Not that they'll ever directly, lightly, honestly admit that on social media, but there's a lot of them that sadly are in that category for exactly the reason of that kind of scenario that we just.
But that scenario, if we turn that scenario around and say, go and get some training on business. If you've missed out on that in your training, go and learn some marketing, go and learn some business strategy. And then go and get clients where you need one client to earn what you normally earn in a week. Right? And then you've got the whole of the rest of the week to find clients. And finding clients isn't hard. There are people out there all over the world. There are people out there crying out for help constantly. Just got to go and put yourself in front of them.
They need to realise you are their solution.
Yeah, just put yourself in front of the people that are crying out for help. Go and talk to them. Marketing isn't hard.
Do you do that largely virtually online now? Because you said before most of your clients are online.
Yeah. Most of my stuff is currently coming from Facebook.
Okay.
And the rest of it is referrals. Because that's another thing as well. When you get clients that you transform, when clients are so blown away by the transformation that you make in their life, when you say to them, would you give us a referral? Would you mind saying something on your Facebook publicly about what we did?
Yeah.
They do, because they're over the moon.
Yeah. And it's, for anyone who goes watching this, if you go on hypnosisweek.com and click on watch past episodes, if you watch the episode with Sheila Granger, hypnogastric band and building your practice, because you just reminded me of something Sheila said about referrals as such an underutilized thing. People are quite often shy or scared to ask for a referral. They don't realize the potential value of it. But Sheila explained an example of going to networking meetings and standing up, and rather than trying to kind of sell her services, she wanted to get to a certain decision maker in a company. There was nobody there from that company, but like this whole so many degrees of separation, someone may know somebody. And she said, rather than trying to sell the people at the networking meeting something, she stood up and said, look, you know what I do, because I'm here every week. This week, if I'd love, if any help, if anyone here knows somebody who can introduce me to such and such of such a company so that they'll actually pick up my telephone call or genuinely read my email so I can get past the gatekeeper. And it was it was a different way of looking at things, because I personally myself have always hated bloody networking meetings. But when she gave that example, I suddenly thought, yeah, then you're not actually trying to sell something to the people there, and it becomes a different,
But, you know, if you look at Facebook as an example, right? Facebook is the world's biggest networking meeting, right? People make the mistake of marketing via Facebook. They think what they need to do is go into Facebook and try and sell stuff to people, right? And that doesn't work, because people are sold to all the time on Facebook. If you go into Facebook and you help people, right? You just go and help people and network and mix with them and get into conversations about what you do without ever trying to sell anything. But your profile mentions what you do. People will go, they seem like a really nice person. They really gave some good advice there. And they'll go and have a look at your profile. And if your profile has a booking link on it, they'll click the link. Right? If you look at my Facebook profile, for instance, there's a great big yellow button on the banner that says free call, click here. Right? And that's there because I go into groups and I find people talking about stuff that I can help with, and I talk to them as if it was a networking meeting.
It's a complete reframe on what Facebook is about. Yeah. But what would you say about things like LinkedIn then?
LinkedIn is a different animal, because LinkedIn is about business. You have to, again, the key to LinkedIn, and I know some real LinkedIn experts. And the key to that, again, is the profile, is the information on your LinkedIn profile needs to speak to your ideal client. We talk about this a lot in the group that I'm most active in. And we talk about entering the conversation that's going on in your ideal client's head. Right. And we've got a great way we do that is you pick a client that you've helped in the past. You ask them for an interview in exchange for a gift of some kind. You know, I'll do you another session if you'll let me do this interview with you. And then you ask them what they were thinking when they chose to work with you, and you ask them to go in depth about how they were thinking.
Yeah.
Then you go in depth in thinking about how into how they're thinking after they worked with you and the difference it made in their life. You record that, like on Skype or on Zoom or whatever. Then you get that transcribed, and you pick out the words and the phrases that they used while they were talking. And then you use those words and phrases and you join them all back up together in a bit of text and you put it on your profile. Because you now know exactly what your ideal client is saying. You know exactly the thoughts that they're having. So when somebody comes along and they look at your comment or whatever and they go, that's interesting, and they look at your profile, they go, oh my God, it's like they're reading my mind. This guy's reading my mind. He knows exactly how I feel. Oh, I'm going to send him a message.
Nice.
That little thing. I mean, I actually paid a business coach a huge amount of money to learn that.
That piece of information is gold. And for people who are watching, I say this every week, watch this video again, but with a piece of paper and a pen in hand and take notes, because there's more gold to be mined from the past hour than you will realise at just one watching. And that tip alone to try and get you to comprehend how potentially powerful that tip is. I suggest, and this has got nothing to do, well, it has got to do with hypnosis in so much as manipulating people's beliefs. But there is a book about Cambridge Analytica, by a friend of mine, Neil Saunders, which you can get from Neil Saunders. That's NeilSanders, Neil Saunders, mindcontrol.com. It's the single best book on Cambridge Analytica, which is was run by a company called Strategic Communications Laboratories, which is a British government. It's listed as being, it's a weaponized asset, PSYOP. For them to actually do what they do, they out of England, they have to have permission from the British government. It's classed as a psychological warfare thing. And this is what hacked people's Facebook's account and influenced Trump being voted into power, influenced the Brexit vote. And there'll be people going, bullshit, like, do your research. Brexit result and Trump were both illegally obtained through this psychological operation called Cambridge Analytica, and Mossad in Israel as a version they call Black Cube. General Communications HQ have a thing they call Trick. They're all similar things. Data mining, but in Cambridge Analytica's case, illegally, what you post, what you look at, things you say, taking those, just like Steve's mentioned, and feeding it back to you, but with something else added on, so that you end up thinking the way they want you to think or acting the way they want you to act, which in Steve's example is to pick up the phone and book a session with him, for example. And this is used by government psychological operations as warfare around the world. If it's good enough for them, surely it's good enough for you to be able to use this technique to get more clients.
I always say I can teach you a lot of stuff, but make sure you only use your powers for good.
Excellent. And it's true, because that is essentially what Steve explained is a positive use of what Cambridge Analytica have done to influence election campaigns around the world illegally. Madness. Well, we've gone over the hour, so our time is running short. So I'm going to ask you the question I finish with everyone with, and then I'd like you to tell everyone how they can find out more, where they can find you on social media, your website, and all that kind of stuff. Although we'll put links below the video as well. But the question I ask everybody at the end is, okay, so somebody knocks on your door, they've already been on a course of some description, and you kind of covered this a little bit earlier, but nonetheless, they ask you to say, can you give me three top tips? What would your top 3 tips be in terms of, it doesn't matter whether it's how to get more clients, it doesn't matter if it's how to grow the business, it doesn't matter if it's how to get better results with the clients, because to some degree you've already covered all them in the past hour. But if you had to go, what would your top 3 takeaways be? Well,
there are so many. There are so many. The first
I know,
one,
but people can always contact you for more.
Yeah, the first one has to be find the clients who will value what you can do more. Go actively looking for the people who expect to pay more and will value what you're doing more, and charge them the money they expect to pay. Because that will make the biggest difference to your life.
Yeah.
That's the big one. Secondly, there's a good chance that you already know everything you need to know. If you've done a half reasonable course, you probably, from the perspective of your skills of what you do, you probably know everything that you need to know to help people. And thirdly, learn how to market what you're doing. Put as much time into learning how to market the stuff as you did into learning how to do it. Yeah.
Marketing, advertising, publicity, promotion. all different arms of the same beast.
Yeah,
I would agree. It's more important for many reasons that Steve's mentioned during the past hour than the actual ritualistic process itself.
yeah.
Excellent. So where can people find you to contact you to overcome their own blocks and obstacles on their pathway to success?
Okay. The easiest way to find me, because nobody can ever spell or pronounce my surname, is that I've got a website with a nice, easy to remember URL, which is themindfixer.com. From there, that links to everything I do.
Excellent.
Go to themindfixer.com. It'll take you to a website that's got my name at the top.
Mm-hmm.
There you can find everything you need to know.
And a lot of people miss that. If you've got a difficult to spell or pronounce name, yeah, by all means, buy the domain so nobody else can and direct it to a website. But the one you advertise and tell people over the phone so they can't misspell it, something easy like Steve's just explained. And that alone can have a difference in you getting found, bizarrely. Well, thank you so much for your time. As I say to everyone each week, seriously, do get a pad and a pen. I promise you that there is, in the past hour, there has been more than you could possibly have consciously taken on board at one go. Go back, ask yourself the questions, ponder the things that Steve's asked you to imagine, actually do it, and then notice the results and change in your thinking, and then search out Steve's website, contact him for more information, and don't forget to join us next week for another edition of Hypnosis Week. Thanks, viewers, and thank you, Steve.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Cheers, dude.